Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of the world's biggest stars and some of my favourite people. And we've got one for you today. A man who's sold over 50 million albums. He's back with a brand new album called A Better World and a beautiful new single called Bethlehem. Chris De Burgh, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Alice. Nice to actually finally see you in the flesh, as it were.
Well, not so much, really. I mean, I'm no picture oil painting or anything like that, but it'll do, I suppose.
No, folks, he's a good-looking lad.
It's great to meet you, and I'll tell you why. There aren't many people who you can put in the legend category without being a bit disingenuous. I mean, you really are. To have global success, a continued career, 30 years at the top, really is remarkable. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you. I don't know why I did it, but or how I did it even, but it comes from a passion for doing what I do. I enjoy touring. I'm aware of the correlation between writing a song, recording a song, then get it on the radio, getting on the TV, and then what follows on then is the touring. For me, it's a bit like being in a hot air balloon with a hole in it, is that you constantly have to pump it up if you wish to remain above the ground. But I enjoy it. That's the important thing.
What I noticed listening to this album, I first listened to it in the car, because that's a good place, because if you get bored, you find yourself pressing next.
Click, yeah.
That's a worry. That didn't happen. And then I listened to it on the train again, and your range is extraordinary. Some of those top notes really are almost classical.
Yeah.
How do you view your voice? Do you see it as something phenomenal? Is that the great gift, or is it the songwriting? What are you best at?
God, hard to answer that question. I still, on the tours, for example, I still do songs like Don't Pay the Ferryman in the original key that I did in 1982. Also, there's a song on that album called Borderline, which is in the key of F. And when you hit that, breaking my heart, full voice, and I do that every night, and I can see people reacting, Christ, you can still sing. Yeah. I think it's a combination of making sure that you use your voice correctly, a great deal of water, and I do lots of things I shouldn't be doing. I eat late, I love spicy food, and I drink alcohol. And sometimes I read that these are 3 things to avoid if you want your voice to remain in good shape. But I was in Berlin recently doing a big show, a lovely show actually, in a place called the Gendarmenmarkt. It was outdoor, about 6,000 people, and then all the way around, there's 2 huge cathedrals at each end, and all the way around you could see the apartments and restaurants that people are sort of listening in as well. And why did I go? Anyway, I went to see this doctor. Oh, for my ears. I want to have my ears checked. And he had a look at my throat, and he said, "Your larynx is perfect. You don't have any of those nodules that you hear about from singers." And I think it's because a long time ago, without actually having any lessons, I figured out the best way to sing, and it's all about breathing. It sounds so obvious. We hear this, about breathing. But I see other peers of mine who I feel possibly their lifestyle isn't, or maybe they smoke or something, but I hear their voices just aren't as good as they used to be. So I look after myself, basically, and there's my voice going...
And talking of the cough, do you wake up in the morning and go, is it still there? Because Chris De Burgh not sounding like Chris De Burgh is going to be a disappointment, isn't it?
No, I never have that problem. No, I wake up in the morning, I stare in the mirror and say, who the hell is that?
It's your granddad.
Who's that old man looking back? I don't know if you know a very funny series called Father Ted, which is my family's favourite, and it's favourite for a lot of people. But there was one, I think, episode, probably one of the... I knew Dermot Morgan, Father Ted, very, very well. He's a very good friend. And I was so sad when he passed on. But he said in one episode, "You know what, Dougal, I woke up this morning and I looked in the mirror. There was this old man with grey hair, white hair, looking back at me." And Dougal says, "Who is that, Ted?" For goodness sake. So anyway, that comment. But I live in quite a large house, and so I can wander around kind of humming to myself. And I think if you keep that muscle working, and the timbre of your voice, I mean, it's interesting. I did quite a lot of shows in North America towards the end of last year with the band. And listening to the way people talk up there, you can actually move your voice all the way up to on the bottom of your nose, and then you speak a little lower, and you can find it coming from your... I mean, you know this because you use your voice for radio. But it's just important to look after it.
And it's that X Factor thing, isn't it? They all seem to shout, and I wonder why. Bring it in, and it will get bigger. It's just the way microphones work, isn't it?
Exactly. You can... And also, we were talking at lunch earlier about how in-ear monitors have transformed the industry. And because back in my early days, even as a support artist to people like Peter Frampton or Supertramp or somebody, you'd have these monitors, and they were never set up for you. They were always set up for the main event. and it's almost impossible to hear anything. How, for example, the Beatles did at Shea Stadium, I have no idea. But now in-ear monitors, you can cut out all the background racket, and you can hear specifically what you want to hear, not exclusively. There's still a bit of noise coming in, but more important, you can also we have audience microphones to pick up what the audience are doing and clapping along or calling out, go away, or just saying, calling out for requests. So the whole thing is transformed right inside your head. It's a very good inclusive. I was asked, does this not make you feel no longer part of the concert? I said, on the contrary, you can have as much or as little as you want. So if, for example, I very rarely have the drummer in my headphones because he's thrashing away and I can hear him, I can see him. So apart from possibly a little hi-hat noise, that's all I need.
And does anything make you nervous at this point? I mean, after 30 years and doing virtually every venue in the world that you wanted to do, is there any event that you could be asked to do now that would still give you that edge?
No. The answer is no. I haven't been nervous. I mean, actually, if I may correct you, 42 years as a professional musician. Or musician, let's not keep the word professional sideways. But the only thing that gives you the slight edge of excitement, or gives me anyway, is when I'm doing live television. And if you know that there's going to be 12 million people watching, you do not want to trip going down those stairs. That makes you breathe a little quicker. But concerts, no, I think it's the old thing. I'm sure you've seen it where you've been to an event where somebody stands up to public speak, and for most people, it's their biggest fear, apart from dying, is public speaking. And somebody's shaking and nervous, and you go, "Oh God, this is going to be a nightmare, torture." And somebody gets up and talks, they don't know what they're saying, and oh my God, and then it's just cringe. Oh God, please finish. But for me, I just stroll on stage, relax, and it immediately relaxes the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes with years of experience.
Yeah.
We're talking on the 30th year since that first album came out that included Lady in Red.
Oh, yeah.
That was the reference I was making.
Okay.
And, of course, a defining moment in anyone's career. But a remarkable success that must even surprise you at this point, that people still love it. They still have it at their wedding. They still have it at their funerals. They still have it at their bar mitzvahs. It's a song that will be forever present.
Well, it'll outlive me, which is an interesting thing. My children will thank me for that. I was watching... Oh, no, somebody alerted me to the fact that X Factor in America, or America's Got Talent or something, they used Lady in Red on that, and... another one was this James Corden, this English lad who's doing so well in America. He used it on one of his things. And I mean, if you were to stop at the average American and say, "You are a Chris De Burgh," what? But they know the song, The Lady in Red. Yeah. So although I go to Russia a lot to do concerts, it's a huge song over there. Funnily enough, the word red in Russia is luck. Red Square is lucky square, so it's, what can I say, it's one of the 300 or so that I've written that seem to emerge above the rest. I suppose it's a double-edged sword, Alex, because if you don't like that song, you don't like anything that artist has done. You think, oh my God, not him, oh, he makes me puke. But funnily enough, the example of that is last year I played for the 16th time the Royal Albert Hall. And the Times newspaper, which I get on a daily basis, even at home in Ireland, they'd sent along, obviously, a reluctant reviewer. Oh, my God, I don't want to see this guy. And he wrote a grudging, respectful review saying, I couldn't believe my eyes. He said this was like a gospel revival show or Bruce Springsteen concert. People were going bonkers. And I think, well, that's what happens at my shows. There's the occasional quiet song, occasional solo song, and then bang, it's lots of exciting stuff.
And I've seen you live many times, and in this album, it is uplifting. Again, there's the light and shade, but the feel of this new album is particularly spiritual, and deliberately so. I wonder whether it's controversial in a sense that to call a song Bethlehem and to talk about how we should be living our lives better and what a mess the world is in, which it is, nobody can deny that. Is this a risk, or is this for you from the heart, take it or leave it, listen to it or don't listen to it?
Totally from the heart, I can assure you. I was actually in Bethlehem last year, just before Christmas, to do a show for ZDF German television, and I performed with a lovely bunch of people, a choir and an orchestra from Palestine, and my thoughts were, this was from the Church of the Nativity, where allegedly Christ was born just beneath and in a crypt. And I had that mixed feelings. It's been with me for a number of years. How can the center of Christianity, affecting millions of people for centuries, also be a flashpoint for so much of the difficulties that have emerged? And then on a broader perspective, if you look through history, something that interests me greatly, you just find that religion, and it still is now, this very day, causing a tremendous amount of disharmony as well as comfort and and spiritual release and so on. And I just felt that writing a song called Bethlehem, which is not actually about the place necessarily, it's about a whole bunch of symbols. And if some of your listeners would care to look at my Facebook page, we've put up a fascinating video put together by an English lad called Steve Bennett. And the video is very much referencing a lot of those symbols and images. And I draw on a lot of influences that have affected me. One of them, for example, is an amazing poem by William Butler Yeats, the Irish poet, called The Second Coming. And there's a line... and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. I mean, it's a stunning line. And if you read the rest, it's a very short poem, but you get an idea of the punch and power that word Bethlehem has. And for me, it's the irony of the various difficulties that have emerged as a result.
Have you come to terms and worked out how religion has been hijacked by so much negativity, and right now it is probably the most contentious thing in the world? As we sit here in London, we're on high terror alert, born out of religion, which is unbelievable because it was set up to bring love and harmony.
Absolutely. I know a few people who are Buddhists, and they say, well, what we believe is the absolute antithesis of what ISIS believe, and there's always a hidden agenda, unfortunately. And I mean, even going back to the Crusades, it was not an attempt to wrest away from Saladin and his people the Holy Cross or free Jerusalem. It was just a big excuse to plunder and rape and pillage and make as much cash as you could. So I'm very suspicious about these people who claim the higher ground and say, what we are doing is for the benefit of mankind. It rarely is. And what another interesting fact that struck me as I travel the world is I mentioned Russia, and I remember being there. I was there the last year and the year before last, but they were having big problems. Putin was having problems with the Economic Union, who had put in place all sorts of bans and products being sent off to Russia as a result of the incursion into Crimea. And business goes on. Every single major outlet that you will see in Bond Street here or in Paris, they're all there. Business goes on. Forget about this posturing that and flag waving and saber rattling that these politicians have. Business just and even now, you know, if you can say one particular country, we loathe your human rights record, yet you can be absolutely certain if you go down to the City of London, they're trading just like nothing ever happened. So I find that hypocrisy rather difficult to stomach sometimes.
Would you ever not go somewhere for political reasons, or do you leave all politics out of it? Because there are many people who have said we can't have anything to do with Russia because of what they've done with human rights and gay issues, things like that. Elton John got involved.
Yep.
Do you leave all that aside because you're about the music?
Absolutely. I believe music is a healer and is an international language. And I mean, if you really wanted to look very carefully at every single country, like America, you find every single reason not to go there, but people go there because they want to make a living, you know. Yeah. And I mean, that's the reality. I did a tour of South Africa again. I've been there many times in just last year, towards the end of the year, and just to bring music to people who, in some cases, are subjugated and in difficulty. I think it's wonderful. I think you it's a positive force. It's an energy for the good, and that's what I love about this industry.
And what about President Trump? Do you think that's on the way?
I'm not going to say anything in case I get beaten up by somebody who's pro-Trump. But
It's going to be an interesting year, isn't it?
Sure is.
This album, I think, is going to be a defining moment for you because I think these songs are going to be played in churches and in community groups around the world for many, many years to come. They've got a spirituality about them, but they've got an uplifting feel. I think the trumpets in them, the drums, they are sing-along songs. Have you deliberately done that so that people can easily access them wherever they are and re-perform?
Well, I must admit that I never had this sort of overriding idea to make it spiritual. I think possibly comes from inside me. I've always had a big problem with organised religion anyway, and I've tried to distance myself, and my family have made that choice too, not based on my opinions, but I think it's a choice that I've made, and the idea that something, well, I won't go into it actually. In Ireland, there was years and years you never talked about sex or religion
right.
because you get into trouble.
Right, but when you bring out an album like this, people are going to ask you about it. And I guess if what you're saying is you are religious or you're not religious, that's it.
I'm not. I'm a
That's
believer,
fascinating.
yeah, but I'm a spiritual believer in possibly an exterior force. But I think you have to pull it into your soul, and you have to reach out and bring it in. I mean, some people believe in the force of prayer, but I think for me to be in a church with somebody being didactic, saying this is the way it is, it goes back again to a lovely book by another writer, James Joyce, called A Portrait of the Artist as the Young Man, where he's done 5 chapters, and it becomes clear that he's loved music. It's a 5-part orchestral piece with cymbals and repetitive words and so on. But there was one line when when this priest, his brother, is shouting at these young, terrified pupils, "The walls of hell are 4,000 miles thick," and they're all terrified. And you read this thing, this is complete nonsense. Come on, So just going back to the album, I didn't have a deliberate attempt. I think if you feel there's a spiritual content, I think it probably comes from the person I am anyway.
Right. And as for family, you've been very blessed throughout your life and career to have avoided scandal and all of that stuff. You've lived your life wholesome, and I think if anybody needs to see how to have longevity in a great career, they could look at you because you've had success and you're still here doing it. As you reflect back now, you've sort of won the war in a way, haven't you? Because to have a number one hit's one thing, but to get a second and a third and be continually releasing albums as you have, I've not got the figure here, but it's something like the
21st studio album.
Yeah, 21st.
Yeah,
that's extraordinary.
I've defied the critics. Actually, people used to ask me, what do you think of the critics? And I ignored them, and I still do. But the great thing is now, you have Facebook, where you have ordinary people who've actually paid for tickets and records coming with their opinions. And it's critically important to realise that it's the majority who make the opinion valid, not just one voice. And I don't know, the thing is, the way I live is quiet. I keep on looking at some of these sort of rock star types, thinking, do they believe they have different organs than anybody else? Do they have different livers and kidneys and brains? No, they don't. And the drug thing always amazed me. I said, why do you need that? What is the deficiency within you people to think just because you're a musician you need to hit on cocaine? I mean, not far from here, Air Studios, where I did a lot of work in the early years, I remember my first album, somebody coming in with a vinyl record with a mound of white powder on it, saying, this is from the guys in Studio 3. And I looked at it, I was just alarmed. And since then, and with respect, the only thing I've ever put up my nose is my finger, and nothing else is going to go up. None of that stuff, no chemicals, I know, I enjoy a drink, I collect wines and so on, but the chemical drugs, no, that's not for me. So I don't get it personally, but I understand perhaps they assume that the pressures of the business allow you to behave like that. It's not true. You don't have to.
And the culture is so depressing to think now that the CB generation is acceptable, and the fact that the Justin Biebers of the world will put themselves naked on Instagram just to get talked about. It doesn't really get any more depressing. You should be defined by your music, shouldn't you, if you're a musician?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I like to think that, and again, I do very well in countries where they don't speak English, which is bizarre, and they're not into style. I mean, if you don't mind, I'll draw your attention to the shoes I'm wearing. They're very, very comfortable. They're called Teva, T-E-V-A, from the United States, and they cost a bit, but they're so comfortable, and it's not the kind of thing you want. My family.
Well, if I'd have known I'd come in my trainers,
yeah,
it's a
look
hot
at yours.
day.
I could
preposterous, aren't they?
I could do my makeup in your shoes.
The interesting thing about your fans, as we wrap up finally, is there's a few people I've interviewed in my career, the Michael Balls, the Daniel O'Donnells, the Cliff Richards, you, who have this following that are so dedicated and so in love with you and your product. There's no greater gift than that for an artist, is there, to have that very special bond that seems everlasting. I've asked you all the question before, and I know there's no answer, but what's the recipe to that? Because that's what everybody's trying to find. How do you make them love you? Because so few achieve that.
Well, for me, there's a quick answer. If you do not love your audience, you cannot expect them to love you. And by that, I mean, you don't go around kissing and hugging and do that American artist thing, hey, I love you, and all this, without really meaning it. But I mean, I have a huge following in Germany, for example, and they seem to love what I do. And I've often asked, why have I succeeded? The first #1 album in Germany in 1982, and I've had quite a few since. Why the longevity? And they say, well, because we like you because you're not a star. We like you because you're normal. You don't act like a star. And these things add up. For example, even the very first time I went to do major TV shows down there as a sort of novice, I always took the time and trouble to thank the producer at the end of the show, on the basis that, politeness it costs nothing, and also if they're looking, and it often happens, somebody fell out and they say, call me up and say, can you be in Munich tomorrow morning? Yeah, I'm there. And they remember you, and it's to do with, I don't think you can manufacture it, actually. The artists, as you've mentioned, Michael Ball, Cliff Richard and Daniel O'Donnell, they are who they are. What you see is what you get.
And none of you are trying to be cool. You're just trying to do what you do. And I always think if you want to be in fashion, that's great, but you'll go out of fashion. It's best to just ride the test of time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Congratulations on this new album. It really is lovely and a great listen. A Better World couldn't be more beautifully summed up in this new album by Chris De Burgh, and the new singles called Bethlehem. You can find out all the details by going to his website, which is www.cdeb.com, and find out all about this new album and get it. It's available today. Lovely to see you again.
Alex, lovely. Thank you.